what's my name and role in the university? I'm Richard Nicholson. I'm the Motorsport Engineering course director, among other jobs. I'm also an associate professor and curriculum lead for automotive and motorsport future technologies. What did you want to be when you grew up? Well, it started, I wanted to be Indiana Jones. And then when I got to about 8 years old, I wanted to be an engineer who worked with cars. And that's what I did. And it has led me through the automotive industry and engineering to coming back to the university I was a student at. What's your experience in your field? I was an apprentice with BMW, then MG Rover. I worked in design engineering, doing trim pieces, interior trim, exterior trim. I worked at Jaguar Land Rover when they were part of Ford, and then when they weren't part of Ford. I worked for a mining equipment manufacturer, designing rock crushers and cutters and all sorts of transportation devices for coal and rock and things like that. And I also worked in the rail industry, designing control cabs and systems for trains that were being designed for the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. Have you ever been in the news? I was in the local newspaper when I was 17 because I won an engineering design competition for JLR to design the Land Rover of 2050, and that would have been back in 1996. What do you love most about teaching? I think it's seeing the students get it. So when it clicks, and then having them come back. I mean, today's a good example. It's graduation this week, so I went to the graduation to hand out some awards, and seeing them understand where they are now as to where they have been. And I got caught by a couple of students who've struggled, who came to thank me that I'd helped them through the last couple of stressful years for them, and then their parents and their grandparents and their brothers and sisters come over and thank me as well, and saying how stressed they were and how much they needed the help to get through. So I think it's seeing the outcome of the students, those that do well and those that have struggled but get there, and showing that their appreciation for the time and efforts that myself and the team all put in to getting them through. What's the biggest myth about your subject? No, I think lots of people think they'll come in and they'll walk away with a job working with Adrian Newey or something like that. We have a good 20% of our graduates from motorsport do end up in Formula One as their first graduate role, which is good. I think the myth is probably that everyone on the motorsport course wants to work in Formula One, because they might do when they turn up when they're 18, 19, but by the time they get to 22, 23, and they've seen what it's like and they've learnt their engineering, I think most of them realise that they just want to be an engineer. They don't necessarily want to be a motorsport engineer, because the majority of the students do go into automotive or other fields, and the knowledge and the understanding is exactly the same. What's my teaching style? I'm relatively laid back. I try and put a few jokes in. They very rarely land. It's normally dead silence in a classroom. But I try to be supportive. So I will give the information that people need, but then I'll be there for questions and queries, and I'll go through the detail with anyone that wants the support. I try to guide as much as I can, not give people the answers. So get them thinking, ask them a question when they've asked me a question, to get them thinking about it. So I think interactive and supportive, I would say. What's my favourite course module and why? The group project has always been good. It's for motorsport, it's based around Formula Student. So at the beginning of the year we get a list of however many projects we need for the students. So if there's 60 students in the year, we'll have 60 projects, which are all systems or components on a vehicle, and they own that system or component for the year. They have to understand what last year's part was, how it worked. They have to manufacture it. They then have to spend their time designing its replacement. So they're working on a design development cycle. So it's a live engineering project. It's like being in industry, and it's what sells a student to a company when they're looking for a role. is it really does show that they understand the design engineering process. They can take a problem and solve it, or they can fix something, or they can generate something from nothing, which is exactly what we do in engineering. So as a student, I'm worried about the academic workload. Should I be? The amount of teaching time we give, you should be doing 2 or 3 times that on your own. So going to the library, reading papers, reading journals, asking questions, doing example questions, doing work basically around the subject. And that's what pushes people up to those higher grades. But it's all manageable. The fact that you get the basic information in a good, consistent timetable means that without too much extra work, you can get a good qualification and come out at the end of it with a reasonable degree. But if you want to put the time in and manage your time well, then you can go for those higher grades. What's the favourite piece of kit I teach with? There's lots of bits. We've got so much equipment over in the engineering building. I've enjoyed working with our Cruden F1 driving simulator in recent years. We had a new one, and it's a great bit of kit. It's the same sort of technology that Formula One use for their test drivers. And it's good fun. You can treat it as a big gaming console if you wanted to, but the whole point is it's not about the person sitting in the chair doing the driving. It's about the people sitting behind the screens, understanding what they're doing, what the simulation is doing, and how you can tweak the simulation or advise the driver to go quicker, be more efficient. That's a really good bit of kit. What has your most successful student gone on to do? As a course director, I think most of my students are successful students. They're all out there doing something in engineering. I was recently contacted by someone who graduated in 2015. They were the lead of the Formula student team back then. They went off and did some karting as a part-time engineer, and then they went to JLR, and he's now head of an emissions subgroup at JLR, looking at sorting out all of the emissions to meet the Euro 7 standards that are coming in the future. So again, he's not working in motorsport anymore, but he's working in engineering. He's working and using everything he learnt with us to produce better emissions on cars, to make the cars more environmentally friendly. But I've got lots of students all over the place. I had a graduate from 2021 who was working part-time at a race team doing touring cars at the weekends while he was a final year student. He carried on doing that at the weekends. He got a job doing aerodynamic design for Polestar. So his day-to-day was automotive aero design. His weekends were doing touring cars. And I think his team and driver won the subsequent year's championship. So he's pretty successful. I've got a current student who actually worked for me. When he graduated, he actually came and worked at the university. But he left us in January, and he now runs the wind tunnel at McLaren F1. And he's doing very well at the minute with McLaren performing so well. So yeah, lots of students, but they're all successful in their own way. What would your advice to my 18-year-old self be when picking a degree? Well, I sort of gave the advice to myself, because when I was an apprentice, I was offered a degree as part of the apprenticeship, and I looked at it and said, this degree is not a degree. It's a selection of degree level modules that have been put together by somebody who thinks these are the topics I should know as an engineer. But I wanted an accredited degree, a degree that's recognised by an international institution, which is why we ended up at Coventry as apprentices back then, because the mechanical engineering degree was accredited by the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, and they are enormous. It's a question that I used to get a lot at open days. Why should I pick motorsport engineering instead of mechanical engineering? I said, well, automotive, motorsport, mechanical are all AMEC accredited, which means when you leave, doesn't matter which one you are, you're a qualified accredited engineer. Doesn't matter if you pick motorsport. If motorsport is what's going to make you get out of bed and go to your course and go to your lectures, then do it. Because at the end of the day, you're still a qualified engineer, and you can go out and work in a mechanical engineering subject or an automotive or rail or aerospace or anything. It doesn't matter what the first word is, it's the second word that's engineering. So professionally recognised, accredited, and something that's going to motivate you to keep doing it and get the most out of it you can. And that's it.